We'll open up for discussion. Anybody have anything they want to say like what we've talked about so far? That's fine. If not, I can continue on, but I'm not gonna. I simply want to. Go ahead.
So, with well, you kind of started out with the tongues of fire and a little bit in James and the things that we speak and things that we hear and take in and speak. But with the prophecy of Isaiah, in Isaiah 6, the thing that where that prophecy came from was Isaiah saw something and he heard something. But then what that did too also was convict him of something. And what it convicted him of was his own speech. And
That's right.
And also that the speech of those around him was not in line with God in his heart. And in that he's heard those things and taken those things in. But then, so he saw the king, and then he says, because I saw the king. And, just going back to the parable of the sower too, it's the kingship, it's the mysteries of the kingship. And it's just, there's a king. And this king, he speaks. And, he's a speaking king. And he has words and he wants his subjects to hear his words. And, but there's so many things that are impediments and things in the way for us to really be able to see him and to hear him. It's interesting too, like within the Isaiah 6, is he didn't hear God at first. He heard the seraphim. And he saw the king. He heard the seraphim, another speaking than what he's used to of those around him in his own speech. But then right after that, and after his confession, then he hears God speak. And just, that's the desire is just, for us to be able to enter his presence, to put ourselves in a position, to be able to behold him and to hear other words than the words that we're so prevalent to listen to. And then to be able to, because of that, hear his voice and to be able to be in line with him and to walk with him and coordinate with him in what he wants to do as his subjects, because his kingdom has a purpose and he's given us purpose within this kingdom. And as we're talking about, just it's also to bring others in and to make disciples. But then the conflict of the prophecy and just how things are and how things kind of work within his kingdom and speaking to people, but also the conflict, like you're saying, it doesn't fit. And just there's that he's sending us to make disciples, but within in this framework of things.
Yeah. And that is the framework. If you're not going along with the words of the king, you're not in the framework. Bring them this silly sign of, they wouldn't offend anybody. What if I write a letter and say, your sign offends me? No rules, just Jesus.
That's a rule in itself.
That's a rule in itself, of course. But the just Jesus, he's supposed to be a king. Is he a toothless king? Is he a ruleless king? A lawless king? He's not reigning if he doesn't have any rule, no rules, over your life. They think they're really cute. I think it's disgusting, personally. Thank you, Adam. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I was looking at the good soil and talking with how it talks about like hearing the word and accepting it.
Yes.
And so I looked up that word accept in the Greek word, and it says to delight in. And I just think that's so interesting how God's saying like the way like the ground, or like being the he's describing the good ground as one who receives the word, but then takes delight in it.
Yeah.
And that all comes from meditation. It's like what you meditate on is eventually what you're going to delight in.
It's true.
And so it's a really proclamation.
Yeah. And of course, Psalm 1, you know, and it's true. Is it something that you delight in? The world would marvel that we don't go along with their entertainment. Why? I delight in something else. I delight completely in a different set of words, a different relationship, a different way of living life. And they condemn you for it. They hate you for it. It's always amazing to be. The emotion that they get involved with the whole thing when you're doing nothing to them. But it is in that you take delight. You know, we say, oh, he meditates in day and night, but there's also that point of that the law is his delight. And again, probably another proof that this was not written in Greek, probably in Aramaic or Hebrew, coming directly from that word. Yeah, that's right. Yannick, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to share. I got to talk to a guy my last off semester during the summer. We were at the flea market and they were doing some evangelistic meetings. We had guests over, and there's a lot of people that gather at the flea market. So they were doing their stuff, and then they sent us out so that we would talk to people. And I'm just standing there and talking to this one drunk guy. He was there with two other women, and I started talking to him, and like, I don't remember exactly what I said, but our conversation was leading into the comparison of lives, like that God offers a better life. And he's just standing there and starts pretty much laughing at it. It's like, I'm pretty much saying that he's satisfied with the way he's living, and he's like barely standing on his knees. His girlfriend or whoever has to support him. And it's like, I started confronting him, and because I was shocked myself, like, don't you see? Because normally I would talk to people and they did, even though they're drunk, they would realize that they're not doing it. And I'm just talking to him, and I want to say, like, don't you see the state of being you're in right now? And one of the things I said is, do you really think your wife, your family would appreciate you coming home in this kind of state all the time? And I guess he just like laughed at it, like, I like it, it satisfies me, I'm fine with it. And it's like, this is what brings me happiness, this is what brings me peace. And I don't remember everything that I said, but just that shock of, wow, you're very ignorant and there's nothing I can do about it. And then his two people that were with him, they started accusing me, and they're like, why are you judging him? You're a Christian, you're not supposed to judge. And I kind of realized that, in a way, it's not my job to tell him what's right or what's wrong. And I had to apologize before, and I'm like, you're right. It's not my job to tell you guys what to do. And it's like, it's not my job to tell this guy what's wrong or what's right. But after that meeting, like, with this guy, a lot of evangelistic meetings just seem very pointless to me. Because it's like, what's the point of us standing there and speaking into a microphone so the whole flea market could hear? And yet they don't even care. They like the singing, they like the music. But it's like, they just go along with their own lives. But then at the same time, there are those who the Holy Spirit touches. And they see from the perspective of God what state of being they are in. And it's like, those are the people, like you said, don't disciple just in despair, but those who are desperate. And that outlook changes ministry in a lot of ways, because now I'm forced not to come before men with my own trying to bring them into the kingdom, but I'm forced to come before God and humble myself and just pray about these things.
Yeah. And a lot, I have to agree with you, a lot of the evangelistic stuff is pointless. And unfortunately, a lot of it is not, at least what I've seen through the years, and this is really true, and I've seen a lot of it, has not been started with very much, maybe a few things here and there, but not a lot of fervent prayer by any means, not believing prayer. I think it was Finney. Yes, in his early days. Oh, I just love it. This group saying, do you want us to pray for you? And he said, no thanks, I would rather rot. And of course he didn't, but it came across like, no. And of course he offended him anyway. But I don't want you praying for him because you don't believe. And he was absolutely right. They were praying for the same things that stayed that way over and over. It was unbelieving prayer, maybe prayer. But I want to go on real quickly just in talking about this, and we'll close up here. But in Matthew chapter 13, please, and we're going to go, and I would encourage you, we're going to read through this Matthew 13 and much of Matthew or Mark 4 also. But a lot of our evangelistic meetings, I agree, are a lot of silliness. But there's a lot of things in these, some of the things that we do that are still in keeping with that. And here in Matthew 13, if you go to verse 23, he is ending the parable of the sower. Verse 24, Jesus presented another parable to them, saying, go to verse 31. He presented another parable to them, saying, verse 33, he spoke another parable. Verse 34, all these things Jesus spoke to the crowds in parables. Verse 36, he left the crowds and went to the house. His disciples came to him and said, explain to us the parable of the tares of the field. See, all this is all piled into one thing after another. This is verse 44. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in the field. Verse 45. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking fine pearls. 47. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet. And that one is the one that he finishes with. Now, that's the one I want to talk about. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet cast into the sea. When you throw your net in, you are throwing it into the water. And if many of the places around the world, I understand, have water that you actually see, if you are off the Texas coast, your net will disappear in about 2 inches of water because it's dirty. It's dirty. You can't see down in there. And in salt water, it often is that way. It's not very clear. And you don't see what's below. The dragnet, and so what is down there is hidden. You do not know the people upon who the words and your prayers are landing. You can't see the heart. The belief system is hidden. I mean, you can because their faith is expressed by their belief system, but when you're talking to people, you don't know everything that's going on inside there. The dragnet was cast into the sea, gathering fish of every kind. And when it was filled, they drew it out on the beach. What was hidden has now become out in the open. And he goes on, they sat down and gathered the good fish in the containers, but the bad they threw away. Now, folks, what is happening here is the dragnet pulled them in anyway. He says, look in verse 47 at the beginning, the kingdom of heaven was like a dragnet. Now, that gives us a picture in many ways, or at least in some ways, of some of the ways that we do evangelism. You're casting the net out there. You don't know who God may have prepared. You don't know, the net comes in, but you only get creatures that are this long and bigger. Why? Because the net has, the 3-inch netting on it. Everywhere it's 3 inches. And so anything that's smaller than 3 inches is wiggling out through the sea and going on. You don't know what you've missed, and you only get these certain creatures. Here they come. But the dragnet caught them and pulled them in and is affecting them one way or another. And again, all of these parables, but this one is one of them that in particular says, you plant the seed. You see, we're going to get to this more in detail. A lot of this, the stuff that we've done today is simply introduction so that you'll understand better as we go along. But the sower sows the word. The sower sows the word. Wherever we are, whatever we are doing, we need to be ready to sow the word. And my first point when we start getting back into the parable of the sower is to be a sower, you have to have something to sow. And if the word is a book that sits on your shelf and that you hear from a preacher every once in a while, you have nothing to sow. All you are is a member of the youth group, and it's spring break and it's time for you to go on one of those trips. You don't have anything. You're not doing anything. If you are living your life away from the word, you don't have, because it's out of the abundance of the heart that the mouth is going to speak.